Hey, what's up? Gonna try something different today. I saw this a few minutes ago, and I just want you to listen to it and see what you think. This is we're gonna be watching. We're not listening to because of copyright and things like that, but we're gonna be watching the dark side of the moon on the old visualizer that they don't offer anymore. While we listen to this. Um, this is one of the coolest things ever made. Enjoy. I'll enjoy some of it anyway.
This is hilarious. I just saw this white lady on here complaining that she just lost her job because she was hired under the diversity, equity, and inclusion program at her work. And you can see she didn't want to say it, but she really wanted to be like, but I'm not black. But that's not what diversity, equity, inclusion meant. The number one recipient of DEI hires is white women. The number one people who have benefited the most from this whole affirmative action and DEI hired has been white women, 100%. And now all these white women who voted for Donald Trump are going to find out that DEI included them. And I'm sorry, but this is one of the best fuck around and find out moments yet, because these women are the ones who deserve to be fired. I'm sorry. Like, if you voted for Donald Trump and you get fired because you were a DEI hire, don't come looking to me for sympathy.
The fact that a lot of white women thought that DEI meant minority or black people, that it didn't include them, is the funniest thing to me. Because white women are DEI hires majority of the time. They benefit from DEI initiatives. So the fact that you would vote against your own interests and then get upset that this is happening to you is just like hilarious to me. What do you mean you didn't realize that you were the diversity hire? Like, you're a woman and you think that you have an equal playing field in this game as a white man? The fact that we have this program set in place stops companies from discriminating against you based off your gender. So I just don't understand why you would think that, oh my God, I'm in the same playing field as a white man, because you never will be. You actively voted against your rights to appease white men, and you're going to pay the consequences for that. DEI does not just mean black people. As a white woman, that also affects you.
Is there anyone out there who can give me one benefit of the DEI movement?
I got you, and you can fact check me on this.
One benefit.
Therapy for veterans, so there's one for you.
One benefit of
Mother's rooms, so when you're a fresh mother and you have to pump your breast for your children.
Give me one benefit.
Paid caregiver leave, so when a family member is about to pass away and your company says, go home, we'll pay you while you see them away.
Give me one benefit of
Paternity leave, so when you're an expectant parent, you can actually spend time with your newborn.
can give me one benefit.
Disable accessible places and spaces. So think like elevators, wheelchair ramps, handicap stalls in the bathroom, even ergonomic like displays and setups for somebody who might not be able to do day-to-day activities. I have a friend who lost most of the use to his hands and his job requires him to type. So there's a screen program that clocks his eyes and goes to where he needs. So there's an example.
Diversity, equity, and inclusion is racist.
I do find it quite interesting that it took for Donald Trump to be president for a second term for people, especially white women, to understand that DEI never meant black. It literally was was a program that means diversity, equity, inclusion. That's what DEI means. And the people who benefited the most off of DEI initiatives were not Black people. They were white women, Asians, at some points, Latinx community, and the queer community at times. But usually if you're white and queer, not if you're of color and queer. And when I got into working with DEI programs at my last organization, I did it because I saw the numbers and I saw that people who look like me, especially Black women, were benefiting the least from these programs. And newsflash, every opportunity that I ever got, I didn't get it because I was Black. I got it because I was better than the other candidate and I had merit. I'm an educated Black woman. So good luck, you guys.
So DEI is about that and about providing services for workers. It's not about the color of a person's skin.
And it's not a quota program. Let's just be clear. It means
Absolutely.
that, not, and it also, I think, for a lot of conservatives,
Okay.
they believe DEI just means Black people getting jobs. And so when they see a Black person in any job, they say, oh, that person's a DEIer. They said it about the literal elected vice president of the United States.
Absolutely.
She wasn't hired. She was hired by the American people. 80 million Americans voted for her, but they can't see through her race and gender. So it isn't just about hiring Black people and women, right? It's about disabled veterans being accommodated. It's veterans returning from wars are also under DEI.
Absolutely. And I see that as a veteran myself, right?
Mhm.
I see this initiative as a direct impact and attack on veterans. Of the 2.2 million federal workers, 642,000 of those are veterans. And so this is, in my way of viewing this, is a direct attack against veterans as well. The misunderstanding of what DEI really is, it's on us to really educate the public as to what it really is all about.
Many were surprised when they found out or realized that veterans fall under DEI. But let me share with you all the other categories that fall under DEI that are no longer protected. All right, the first category, neurodiversity. This category covered or protected individuals with autism, ADHD, dyslexia, or other neurological conditions. Socioeconomic status, essentially community members from low-income areas. The one we've spoken about was veterans. That one also falls under that, as well as active duty military spouses. Yes, my dependents, you fall under a category. And you are no longer protected by the DEI. Parental and caregiver inclusion, which means that they do not give a shit about you having to go take care of your child. No more flexible working schedule, no more nothing. Age diversity, they are going to be able to discriminate you if you're too young or if you're too old. Religious and spiritual practices. Oh, you gotta go pray? You're fired. You're no longer protected. Oh, it's a holiday for you? Don't care, you need to show up to work. None of this is protected anymore. Language. How many of us speak a different language and usually find a coworker that speaks it too, and you're over there just chatting away? Yeah, you're no longer protected. And lastly, body diversity. You can now be discriminated by the size of your body, by what you look like.
One of the lesser known, most common recipients of DEI is white Republicans. Before you get your panties in a twist, let me explain. As I'm sure you know, the majority of rural Americans vote Republican. And I can tell you this with certainty right now, the biggest state schools in whatever state you reside in have initiatives that give priority to rural students. Vast majority of students that benefit from those initiatives are white. You don't have to sign up for these programs. It's based off of your address and the county that you live in. Students that are from these counties are also likely receiving a lot more financial aid than the average student. And if you live in a state that has Appalachian counties, just go ahead and double that. This doesn't just apply to undergraduate institutions. A lot of medical schools do this as well. There's a huge need for people to practice rural medicine. And if you come from a rural county, you're more likely to stay in the area and practice medicine. So they give huge priority to students that are from rural counties. And again, if you're in a state that has Appalachian counties, they're prioritizing that too. The unfortunate reality is that most of these students don't even realize that they are the benefactors of DEI. And so when new students come to apply that come from these rural and or Appalachian counties, they're not going to get to benefit from those same initiatives. And it'll be too late. A lot of you seem to think that DEI is just for minorities and didn't realize that you were also a minority as well.
Applying to all these different jobs and programs and schools throughout my life, I've always gotten into everything I've applied for. And, well, if DEI is really a problem, then why hasn't it stopped me from being able to attain the goals that I've set forth for myself? Perhaps those of you who blame DEI for your problems, it's really just something within yourself. Maybe you don't have the merit that you need for something, and that's okay. It doesn't mean that you're the lowest of the low or nothing like that. You can get better, but you can't get better if you just keep blaming other people, which kind of seems like what they're trying to get us to do, huh? If you have better thoughts about it than me, let me know, though.
This post reads, veterans didn't know they were DEI hires because everyone thinks DEI means black. And this is the same thing that happened with affirmative action, because white women benefited the most from affirmative action, but got mad because they thought that people of color, black people, were getting admitted to college in place of them and didn't deserve to be. And the reason that the propaganda around affirmative action and diversity, equity, inclusion has worked this way is because of racism. And at a certain point, you have to realize that a lot of these people are grown adults who have the ability to look stuff up. Most of these veterans who do vote, most of these people getting into colleges who do vote, have the ability to look up what these actually are instead of listening to a charismatic man on a stage tell them what it means. And again, the reason that the propaganda works is because of the racism.
The real F around and find out moment is here. A lot of people are looking at the Black community thinking that we are the recipients and benefactors of DEI programs and affirmative action programs. And I know affirmative action is no longer, but whenever they hear the term DEI or they hear the term affirmative action, they look to the Black community thinking that we are the benefactor. Now, here's some information for you. The number one recipient of DEI are white women. That is according to the U.S. Department of Labor. And others fall under that group, under the minority group, the ethnic minority. Number one recipient under that group are Latino and Hispanic Americans. Number two are Asian Americans. Number three are Native Americans. Number four, individuals with disability. Number five, veterans. Okay? And number six.
See this? This is
Bastards.
Number six, the LGBTQ plus community. And guess who comes last at receiving DEI benefits? Guess who comes last? That's right. Black Americans. Black people. Let me also say, you can do a Google search and you will see the primary benefactors of DEI programs are not only white women, but white men, white male CEOs. Those are the ones who have benefited the most from DEI initiative programs.
all right.
I'm really happy to hear a couple seeds that I've planted and things that I've said. I know that you've heard me say them here. I've said them many times where they weren't on here, that people need to earn their places. But you can see that those who don't earn their places are trying to force that truth and twist it into another, I don't know, opposite reality of what it is, to project that that's what they want to create, even though they're going to control it and not earn anything while they control it. Like they haven't earned the control that they're trying to put forth into society now by taking programs away and destroying the country and trying to rebuild it in their image using, this meritocracy, which is, it should still be a democracy, but you should still have to earn what you get, right? Instead of thieving and stealing and lying and cheating, right? And it's good to hear that kind of reflected, that you see that CEOs of businesses and white men. And I really take umbrage to the fact that all these people are just calling out white women. Only at the end it took a black woman to say that it's white men, that I'm sure you can find in forums all over the internet and in hotel gathering areas trying to sell something, lying to people, that you can find them being the recipients of these DEI money that is handed out, all the while preaching and complaining to put other people down. There's one other thing that I found today. Well, it found me. Let's see. Is this it? No. Here we go. That's on the forefathers. And you can directly link what's going on today with what they warned about as would be the destruction of this country.
The customary weapon to destroy freedom. That's how George Washington described violations of the Constitution, usurpations of power. But he was far from alone. The founders and old revolutionaries repeatedly warned us. Every overstep, every excuse, every precedent, no matter how small, sets us on a path to destroy liberty. So on this episode, I'm going to share some of their top and long forgotten warnings about power, precedent, and the dangerous, slippery slope to tyranny. But first of all, welcome and thank you for joining me here on the Path to Liberty. My name is Michael Bolden with the 10th Amendment Center, and this is the show for Wednesday, January 29th, 2025. Let's kick it off first here with an essential question from John Dickinson, the penman of the American Revolution, in his Letters from a Farmer in Pennsylvania, 1767, the most widely read documents on American liberty throughout the Revolution up until the publication of Thomas Paine's Common Sense. These were widely read, widely understood, widely accepted principles. Here's the question that Dickinson asked. For who are a free people? Not those, he wrote, over whom government is reasonable and equitably exercised, but those who live under a government so constitutionally checked and controlled that proper provision is made against its being otherwise exercised. So TLDR, if you happen to find people in power to do the right thing with power, that's just luck. It's not really a free society. That's not what describes a free people. And while this was one of the most important principles, I think, of the American Revolution, in one of the most widely read documents of the time, we also see how the same view was brought forward to the Constitution. Here's St. George Tucker and his view of the Constitution of the United States. He had the same message. It is the due restraint and not the moderation of rulers that constitutes a state of liberty. But he continued with this. As the power to oppress, though never exercised, does a state of slavery. So just merely having the power, even if they don't use the power in a bad way, is tyranny. That's how the founding generation looked at things. And I think that's how we should look at things as well. And this is why the founding generation created a bunch of written constitutions during the Revolution and after. In the states, the Articles of Confederation. And here's James Madison in the Virginia Ratifying Convention describing the structure of the Constitution for the United States. He said, the powers of the federal government are enumerated. They're spelled out. He said they are few and defined in Federalist 45, and he had a similar take in June of 1788 in Virginia. He said it can only operate in certain cases. It has legislative powers on defined and limited objects, beyond which it cannot extend its jurisdiction. Now, anything that goes beyond those limits is what the founders called usurpations of power. Usurpation is a theft of power, so a usurpation is considered arbitrary power, the very definition of tyranny. James Otis Jr. in 1762 described things like this. He said, arbitrary, which in plain English means no more than do as one pleases. If the people of the several states, created a constitution that delegated to the federal government certain things that they wanted the federal government to do as their agent, and the federal government decides they want to do more than that, that's arbitrary power. They're just doing whatever the heck they want. They're not following the rules at all. Arbitrary power was such a big deal to the old revolutionaries that it was included as one of the so-called grievances, the injuries and usurpations, the abuses in the Declaration of Independence. Now, I cover that in much more detail in an episode almost 3 years ago now. Amazing to me. Arbitrary power, how the founders defined tyranny. That'll be linked to in the show notes. Alan Mosley will get it organized, and I will get it published, the blog post for this episode, over at 10thamendmentcenter.com/path to liberty, all spelled out. That'll be published a couple of hours after this live stream is done. Now, the founders widely understood that allowing government to get away with arbitrary power, usurpations of power, violations of the Constitution was a recipe for total disaster. Once you do that, you establish what John Dickinson called the detestable precedent, that they can go beyond the limits. If you give them limits and then you allow them to go beyond those limits, well, then that tells government that they can come up with other reasons to go beyond that limits, and they'll keep doing it over and over and over, and they will never, ever stop. Ever. Here's how Dickinson described things in his broadside against the Stamp Act, urging people to refuse to comply with it, not wait for it to be repealed, because waiting for it to be repealed is the detestable precedent. He said, if you comply with the act by using stamped papers, you fix. You rivet perpetual chains upon your unhappy country. You unnecessarily voluntarily establish the detestable precedent which those who have forged your fetters ardently wish for, to varnish the future exercise of this new claimed authority. Everyone understood that once you let it get away with arbitrary power, there's going to be more and more arbitrary power. And as John Adams described it back when he was one of the good guys writing as Novanglis #3, the Atlas of Independence in 1775, it's a deadly disease. It'll just, well, here's how he put it. The nature of encroachment upon the American Constitution is such as to grow every day more and more encroaching. Like a cancer, it eats faster and faster every hour. Now, living under the largest government in history, once again, we've seen all kinds of cancers eating away at our Constitution and our liberty from government for generations. Now, unfortunately, though, especially these days, we hear from tons of people, left, right, and center, that all kinds of constitutional violations, we should just ignore that, set that aside for various reasons. The most common ones are, well, they like the program, or they like the person doing it or the team doing it. No, you can't. I like what they're doing in these other areas, so I don't want to attack them on this thing. Or will they tell us, it's just too small? It's not, we've got so many other bigger things to worry about. And I can understand prioritizing our resources, but the suggestion that we should just not even comment on it or defend it because it's a small thing really is more of this detestable precedent. Now let's address that last one first. The smallness of a constitutional violation is actually what Dickinson called the most dangerous one. He considered ignoring it because it's so small, a fatal error. He said some persons, I should pull this up on the screen so I'm not staring off into the space there. Some persons, he said, may think this act of no consequence because the duties are so small. He's talking about the Townshend Acts in 1767. He said, this is a fatal error. For Dickinson, the small attacks on liberty, the small violations of the Constitution were really the most alarming ones because they obviously are setting something up for later. He said that is the very circumstance most alarming to me, for I am convinced that the authors of this law would never have obtained an act to raise so trifling a sum as it must do, had they not intended by it to establish a precedent for future use. So many people today only think in the immediate term. Their time preference is just wild to me. The founding generation, especially as someone who reads so much from the founders and the old revolutionaries, they constantly thought, well, what will this allow them to get away with in the future? What will this precedent establish? And Dickinson's pointing out that the smallest violations of the Constitution, even the unwritten British Constitution, were the most dangerous because those are the ones that people would generally ignore. And then you have a precedent for them to do much bigger ones on the same legal precedent. He continued, to console ourselves with the smallness of the duties is to walk deliberately into the snare that is set for us. It's a trap. That's not Dickinson, but praising the neatness of the workmanship. But it is a trap. Every time they just put out a little one that they shouldn't do, a little violation of the Constitution, a small attack on your liberty, they're really establishing more of that detestable precedent to build on it in the future. Now, Thomas Jefferson affirmed this same type of a principle, this essential principle of the American Revolution many years later in his opinion rejecting the constitutionality of Alexander Hamilton's National Bank Bill. This is February 15, 1791. He said to take a single step beyond the boundaries thus specially drawn around the powers of Congress is to take possession of a boundless field of power no longer susceptible of any definition. Again, this is you're basically if you say that they can violate the limits of the Constitution, you are saying they can do whatever the hell they want, whenever they want. It's just a matter of political willpower, getting enough people behind them. And this is really the living, breathing Constitution, which is a dead one. It has no restrictions whatsoever. But constitutions don't enforce themselves. So it's really the people voluntarily establishing that detestable precedent. Now back to St. George Tucker, he put it like this. If in a limited government, the public functionaries exceed the limits which the Constitution prescribes to their powers, every such act is an act of usurpation in the government, and as such, treason against the sovereignty of the people, which is thus endeavored to be subverted and transferred to the usurpers. Man, there is so much in that one. They're stealing from you. Usurpation is theft of power from the people. Sovereignty is final authority. If the people have said you could only do these things and they steal it anyways, how are you supposed to deal with thieves and robbers? Well, that's a different question. Here's how Samuel Adams described these things. He said, the people, this is a letter to Arthur Lee, and I think this is the attitude more of us really need to have today. The people hold the invasion of their rights and liberties the most horrid rebellion, and neglect to defend them against any power whatsoever, the highest treason. So next up, let's address that second kind of claim that people make, why we should just turn a blind eye to something that is, well, I like my guy, and I like 10 things that he's doing, and I'm not going to complain about these 2 little ones. That's not even that big of a deal anyways. Samuel Adams, as a young man in 1748, put it like this. It is a very great mistake to imagine that the object of loyalty is the authority and interest of one individual man, however dignified by the applause or enriched by the success of popular actions. And he later wrote as well, true loyalty is founded in love and possession of liberty, not individuals. So we have to have that as our goal. Mercy Otis Warren, this isn't an exact same line, but I think it's pretty similar. It shows this kind of person first, faction first mentality in her great History of the Revolution, the rise, progress, and termination of the American Revolution. This will also be linked to in the show notes. I encourage you to, it's a free read over at Liberty Fund. You can read it online or download various versions of it. But she said there is a propensity in mankind to enlist themselves under the authority of names and to adopt the opinions of men of celebrity more from the fashion of the times than from the convictions of reason. Sounds familiar to me. Thus, with the borrowed language of their chieftain, I love how she writes these things, they impose upon themselves until they think his opinions are their own, and are often wrought up to such a fierce spirit of contention that they appear ready to defend them in all the cruel modes of the savage, who is seldom actuated by motives of candor and forgiveness of injuries. Now let's go to that third excuse that we're always given. And I think this actually covers all three. We've got this timeless warning from George Washington's farewell address that turning a blind eye to violations of the Constitution, to usurpations of power, to arbitrary power for any reason, it doesn't matter why, is a weapon to destroy freedom. Weapon was George Washington's term. Now, first, he reminds us that if we think the limits of the Constitution, well, are they too strict? There's actually a process to deal with that. He said, if, in the opinion of the people, the distribution or modification of the constitutional powers be in any particular wrong, let it be corrected by an amendment in the way which the Constitution designates. I wish I had this one handy in my show notes. Maybe I'll be able to get it to Ellen before I'm all wrapped up with everything. But I did an episode just this last fall on what I consider to be the most important veto in history. It was James Madison as president, his last day in office, March of 1817. They sent him an infrastructure spending bill. Now, he had actually advocated in favor of infrastructure spending for a long time. So I think they thought that this was going to be easy peasy. They're going to get him to sign it. And so they went to go visit him, the sponsor of the legislation, with a small group of people. And before they left, he's like, I got to let you know, I'm going to veto this thing, because what they sent to his desk did not fit within the lines of the Constitution, even though he was politically in favor of the goal, politically in favor of what they were trying to do. On his last day in office, even at their urging, they said, well, why not just not do anything? Monroe's coming in tomorrow. Maybe we can convince him. But he felt his oath to the Constitution required him to veto it. And he explained it. He explained in his veto message, like, look, I'm not unaware of what we're trying to do here. It's just that what you did in this legislation isn't within the bounds of the Constitution. So I have to withhold my signature until you provide an amendment to the Constitution to authorize the federal government to do this. So anyways, George Washington had this very similar point in his farewell address as well. But wait, there is more. Washington continued with this, but let there be no change by usurpation. For though this, in one instance, may be the instrument of good, it is the customary weapon by which free governments are destroyed. And he continued, pointing out that the precedent must always greatly overbalance in permanent evil any partial or transient benefit which the use can at any time yield. So, short version is, even if you like what they're doing, you have to reject it. Don't let them usurp power, because this is a weapon to destroy freedom, and it will always set a precedent, as all the old revolutionaries understood, for more and more in the future. And you may not like the people who have that precedent in the future. So in short, ignoring attacks on the Constitution, on your liberty, because you like the policy, you like the team, you like the person, you think they're too small, whatever the reason, it doesn't even matter. Any reason under the sun is a weapon that destroys freedom. And I think James Otis Jr. described things best. He said, so long as people will submit to arbitrary measures, so long will they find masters. And there is absolutely nothing that helps us reach and teach more people about these essential foundational principles from the ratification debates, from the revolution, and even further back, more than the financial faith and support of our members. If you like the work that we're doing, you want to help support us, and you want to help us continue and expand this effort, you can join us for as little as $2 a month over at 10thamendmentcenter.com/members. It's all spelled out, 10thamendmentcenter.com/members. We also have annual, 5-year, and lifetime options available. or if you prefer a one-time gift rather than a membership, we'll take that as well.
Okay. Not that I'm not into supporting those guys. I think it could be good. I hope that that was informative. And yeah, I do have a few things I'd like to say on it, of course, right? But I am busy at the moment, so I'll make it quick. Hold on one sec. So, yeah, I thought it was really interesting that, and it's not interesting, it's really kind of sad that we live in a world where guys like to throw around their weight and act like they're this, like, and what really sucks is I'm a guy, right? And I have to come out and say this about my fellow males in the world. Hold on one sec. But in order to have that attitude and to swag around like they're God's greatest gift to the earth, you know, and that they're somehow above women or children or anything else, animals, you know, written in a book by their own hand that says that they shall have dominion over everything, you know what I mean? To cheat, to have that power just shows that they really don't have the power. You know what I mean? And it sucks that women will attack each other and do the bidding of the people that want to remain in a place that they didn't earn, and trying to force this, you know, twisted version of something that should be accomplished, that I'm trying to accomplish, earning where you are in life. So that everybody fights it for the wrong reasons and fights each other again, which I'm really glad that this one guy in that whole first video came out and said exactly what I've been saying. And it's good that that's taking root, because it is what it is. It's not, you know, it's something within them. It's something lacking that they feel, and they know that if the truth were out and if we were actually in a meritocracy that they're trying to push, they would not be in the position that they are, which is why it's being done the way that it is. And it's being done all messed up. And yeah, the isolation of America from its allies, even its neighbors now, I mean, the total isolation, the killing of the economy, the making everything so bad so that somebody can swoop in or act like they're swooping in to save the day. And, you know, it's like when this person, this so-called president we have, came in or went on a press conference or a news junket and said that they were gonna live up to one of their promises and say that, you know, no taxation on tips. The easiest thing that you can do with everything that they're trying to do right now, you know what I mean? Overstepping the bounds. I mean, you heard it in there. George Washington said it himself, any step or any move to normalize anything against the Constitution is going to be the downfall. And we've been living in that reality from one party doing that, just kind of trying to strip the Constitution, all because of a war that was fought in the past, which they created because they didn't want to work for the products that they were producing. They wanted to have other people do the work for them so that they could control things. So they created the problem that they're going to fix, which they're not fixing. They're creating another huge problem that they're going to come in and be like, oh, dun, 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 I'm here to save the day. I'm going to save America because it's so bad. Look how bad it is. And all this person has to do is lie and keep lying and lying and lying and lying until people believe it, you know. And they already have the brainwashed, you know, cult-like members that they have, that it doesn't even matter what they say. And sometimes they know that they're lying. It doesn't matter. They're going to repeat it until it's accepted, because they're the ones that are so small inside. It's not about us. It's about what, it's something within them that they need to fix. And it all stems to racism, it all, or whatever you call it. I mean, racism isn't racism. You know what I mean? Racism is, the definition of racism is just, you care about your culture, you care about your race. Everybody's racist. Every culture in the world is racist in some form or another. Some take it to extremes, but even though they're like, you're not going to marry anybody that's outside of our culture, that kind of thing. That's racism, but that's not the extreme of racism. The extreme of racism is bigotry, right? Where you actually hate somebody and you will do violent acts against them, try to wipe them off the face of the earth, etc., etc. That's not racism. It's genocide and psychotic behavior. It's schism that's in the world within a lot of people. It's reflected in so many things. But so I hope that was cool, and I hope that this right here is really cool. I hope you liked this, because this no longer exists. I mean, it exists, but not in this form. Like, this is the old visualizer that I have tried to preserve, which I'll never hook this computer up to the internet ever again, because if I do, and I update this computer, it's gonna eliminate this visualizer, and I'll get the new one that isn't a quarter of what this one is. It's cool, but this is one of the most amazing things that the technological age, I think, has produced, in my view. I mean, it's produced a lot of cool things, but this is definitely one of them. This harkens back to, most Gen Xers can understand this, that this harkens back to our generation of cool shit. Anyway, I hope everybody learned something. And that wasn't an attack on white women, but white women do need to wake up a little bit, just a little bit. All right, see you later. Wait, how do I get out of here? Sorry. Hold on one sec. Oh yeah, I clicked that. Why isn't it stopping? There we go. All right. See you later.